Fusion Mobile, quality e-learning experience on the go.
You're welcome to Fusion Mobile e-learning platform. My name is Jacob Uchenna and I'm your teacher for economics. Today we'll be looking at the topic or the study session on inflation. Inflation is regarded as one of the dangerous elements when it has to do with an economy. In fact, an author calls it the devil, one of the devils of an economy, in the sense that during inflation, certain things are amiss. The economy is not really producing so much yet. There's a hike in price, standard of living falls, and so on and so forth. Those are the things we'll be looking at on the study session. We have a course outline. On the course outline, we have the meaning and definition of inflation. We have the measurements of inflation. We have the types of inflation, causes of inflation, effects of inflation, and how to control inflation. Now, to start with, inflation has been defined as the rate of general increase in the general price level of goods and services in a country measured over a period of time. Meaning that inflation looks at the prices of items, not at the nominal increase, that is value increase. It looks at the percentage increase. That is why inflation is always measured in percentages, in rates. Now, looking at inflation, because when you talk about inflation, it talks about percentage increases, meaning that definitely when we have a price index of 128%, like that, 128%, it means that with a particular period with a particular base of 100%, there's an inflation of 28%. There was a rise of 28%. Definitely, countries that will experience such things has not existed, or is still at a very backward stage. More realistically, inflation rate is always meant to be maintained between 3 and 7%, or even less than that in a year. Now, looking at inflation, we have to say, okay, what are ways to measure inflation? That's item number 2, point number 2. What are the ways of measuring inflation? Inflation is measurable using using the general price indices. General price indices, of course, could also be brought down into, we have the consumer price index can be used. Consumer price index, how to measure inflation, the consumer price index, the producer's price index, and we can also we also have the GDP index. Now, most cases, when you measure real GDP at a given base level, then you can use that to estimate your level of inflation. Now, the consumer price, these are what measures of how to measure inflation. Looking at the next one, types of inflation. Now, inflation has various types. Inflation, which we are going to list some, if not all of them. We have the first one, the most common one. You have the demand pull inflation. Demand pull inflation. We have the cost push inflation. We have the galloping inflation. We have the stagflation, imported inflation, Now, these things, then we have the creeping inflation. Then we have inflation spiral or spiral. Now, these things, demand pull inflation, let's start with that. Demand pull inflation refers to types of inflation that which is where increase in prices or rise in prices are actually caused by the excess of demand over supply. When demand increases over supply, what happens, like we studied in our theory of price determination, what happens is that the suppliers or the producers increase their price since the economy has become survival of the fittest. So the few goods that are available will be benefiting those that can afford it. Now, the second one, we talk about the cost push inflation. The cost push inflation talks about the kind of inflation or rises in price that is primarily caused by an increase in the price of production inputs. Some other causes could lead to that, but later we'll look at that under causes of inflation. The next one, galloping inflation, or some others call it hyperinflation. This is a sharp or momentary increase in the price level of goods at a given time. Usually this is caused by a sudden change either in government policy or sudden shock in the economy. Now the next one, we have the stagflation. Stagflation is the situation whereby increase in price is caused by low productivity and high rate of unemployment. So when an economy experiences high rate of unemployment and there's low productivity, then the economy experiences what you call stagflation. Now, the following one, which you call the imported inflation, is a kind of inflation that the rise in price is as a result of the rate of exchange between the naira and the local currency and the foreign currency. In such cases, the foreign currency or the exchange rate determines what the local prices of such imported goods will be. So, in other words, when a country relies so much on imported goods, then it leads to what you call imported inflation. And the next one, creeping inflation, is a gradual but persistent, which some people call the ordinary inflation, or a one figure or a less than 1% increase inflation rate. Now, it is a gradual but persistent rise in prices of goods and services, and this occurs at an intermittent rate. Now, these kind of things, then the last one we will look at is the spiral inflation, or what we call inflation spiral. It is a kind of increase in price or inflation rate that is brought about by the same measures that were set up to control or curb increase in prices, which turns around to cause inflation. So it becomes a spiral effect. Now, these are the types of inflation. We'll take a look at the next one, which is causes. Causes of inflation. Inflation is actually caused by certain factors, some of which we have actually mentioned. Now, first off, we look at them. Let's itemize them. First one, excess of demand over supply. Supply. Increase in money supply. Decrease in production, increase in price of production inputs, next one, over-reliance on foreign-made goods, reliance on foreign-made goods, government policy, natural disasters, war, and some other ones. We have 8 there, and actually there are some other ones. So from here we have the excess of demand over supply is talking about the rate, the case at which when that prices are moved up as a result of an increase in the level of demand, where the society becomes a survival of the fittest. The second one is increase in money supply. That means, in the case of demand pull inflation, so much money is chasing very few goods. So, and because of that, that means there's so much money in circulation in the economy with people, so that they can use it which is available to them to demand for goods and services. So in other words, that means there's high volume of money in circulation, and the volume of money in circulation refers to money supply. The next one, we have decrease in production. Decrease in production definitely, it means that when there's decrease in production, there will be decrease in supply of goods and services. Now, in such cases, when such happens, it means it will reduce the amount of goods and services available in the market, and that will lead to inflation. The next one, increase in price of production inputs. Things like labor, interest, that is wages. When wages increase, it adds to the cost of production, and when it adds to the cost of production, the cost of final goods definitely will be high, and that leads to higher market price. Then the next one, you talk about what? Over reliance on foreign-made goods. That is the case where a country depends on foreign-made goods, which leads to imported inflation. Next one, government policy. Government policy there could be just a sudden government policy, or the case of the inflation spiral, that the government policy will lead to certain changes in price, increase in price. Then the next one here, you have natural disasters, things like earthquake, hurricane, and so on and so forth. And the last one is war or violence, and so on and so forth. Now is a rundown or a run-through of the causes of inflation. Now, what are the things that will result? What are the economic effects of inflation? Effects of inflation. Now, first of all, is that there will be loss in value of money. Two, there is definitely high money supply, high volume of money in circulation. Three, escalation of poverty. 4, effects of inflation leads to Okay, loss in value of money, high volume of money in circulation, escalation of poverty, debtors gain, fixed income earners suffer. Next one, creditors will also what? Lose. Creditors will lose. That means that borrowing is discouraged, or lending is discouraged now and thereabouts. Now, loss in value of money. The value of money refers to the quantity of goods and services that a given value of money can actually get. But on the other hand, talking about the value of money, the higher the price, the lower the value of money, since value of money is determined by price. So which means that the higher the price, the lower the quantity of goods and services which a particular item or a particular amount of money can afford. Now the next one talks about the high volume of money in circulation, because a whole lot of people, that is why there will be excess demand over supply, and one of the things that will lead to is escalation of poverty and probably hunger, because standard of living, cost of living will be high. That's another one, increased cost of living. So the next one here is that the debtors will gain. Debtors are people that have a form of liability or something to settle with someone. That means someone had borrowed. So in other words, it actually takes a kind of shorter time or so to get the debt to be settled, because the value of money at the time the debt was acquired or was incurred is lesser than what it is now. So if for instance we had a debt of 500,000 for a few let's say 4 years back, definitely if 500,000 naira could get a car, or let's say 50 bags of rice, okay, let's say 100 bags of rice could get 100 bags of rice, then presently 500,000 can only get let's say 500,000 can only get 70 bags of rice. That means the worth of 500,000 has actually depreciated. That means as at the time the debtor used the money, he was having higher worth of money or real money in his possession. But during inflation, that one reduces. Now the next thing, definitely the next one we talk about what? The fixed income earners suffer, because fixed income is fixed. Then what happens is that the higher the price, the fewer the higher the cost of living, and the fewer the wants that one can satisfy with the limited or fixed income. Now the next one we are talking about here, we look at the we heard that creditors will lose. Since debtors gain, creditors lose, because the value of what they gave out is not the value of what they are getting. Even nominal wise, it is going to be the same, but value wise, it is not. Next one is that lending is discouraged. Lending is discouraged. Of course, since debtors will lose the value of money, then they will be unwilling to borrow to lend to someone. And the last one is there will be increased cost of living. Now, I think I've explained that before. Definitely with higher prices, then for you to maintain the same living standard, it will be at a higher cost. Now, these are the effects of inflation. But now, how do we control inflation? How to control inflation? How to control inflation. Now, inflation here, first of all, we said that inflation has to do with the increase in prices, and one of the primary causes of inflation is the increased demand over supply. When demand increases over supply, it means definitely that the people spending have so much in their hands to spend. So the whole things that is meant to control inflation will have to deal with reducing the volume of money in circulation. That is primarily. Now, how to control inflation? We have what we call physical control, and we have the fiscal control and monetary control. Now, in the case of physical control, you have increase in the volume of production, increase in the volume of output of production, Secondly, we look at subsidies by government for producers. We also look at, now before we go there, we look at what the fiscal control now, that is use of fiscal policy. The fiscal policy, we could say what? Increase in taxation, we talk about reduction in government expenditure, and of course, more generally, you could adopt a surplus budgeting system. Now, we could also look at what? Also look at the monetary policy side of it. That's what we call the monetary control. The monetary policy side of it, we look at what? Decrease in supply of money, in money supply. How do we do that? We can do that by either, of course, using any of the monetary policy instruments. Now, we look at decrease in money supply. Now, the main ways we can reduce money supply, we can use the bank rate, we can use the cash ratio, we can decide to use what? Direct bank reserves or bank rates. Now, those are the things we can increase lending rates, Now, any way that the commercial banks can be controlled, then they can control inflation. Now, looking at this, the first one says increase in the volume of output of production. That is in so many ways, either through motivation of workers or through a form of just making sure that the quality of workers or the quality of production input is able to be more efficient and produces higher. Then the next one is what? Subsidies by government for producers. This will actually reduce the cost of production on the part of the producers. So what that means, definitely, that prices will either be stable or reduced. Then the next one is increase in taxation. Taxation is one of the sources of government revenue, and that means that when you are increasing tax, you are reducing the volume of money in circulation. The next one is reduction in government expenditure. Definitely, government expenditure through projects and so on injects more money into circulation. But when you regulate that, then there is a kind of sanity or a balance in the economy. Then we talk about surplus budgeting, which is a type of budget where the expected revenue is higher than the proposed expenditure. The expected revenue in this case will make sure that things like so many ways that the government will get money from the society while the expenditure is reduced. Then the next one is decrease in money supply. Money supply is the total amount of money in circulation. We can use, like we said, we can use different measures to reduce amount of money in circulation, and we talk about what? Increase in bank lending rate, which is the rate at which commercial banks are free to give out loans. There are other things like increased cash ratio, or so reduced cash ratio, increased cash reserves, and so on and so forth. Now with this, we have come to the end of the study session. You'll be having a few questions on your screen. When you do, attempt them, and if you have problems anywhere, you go back to the video.